Marc Tessier-Lavigne was cleared of accusations of scientific fraud and misconduct, but the review said his work had, quote, multiple problems, end quote, and fell below customary standards of scientific rigor. This is a dramatic fall from the top of one of the world's most respected universities. It also raises wider questions about data manipulation in academic research. Well, doctors are sending abortion pills into states with bans. At least 3,500 doses have been shipped since mid-June. The effort could help facilitate at least 42,000 abortions in states where they're restricted over the next year. Telemedicine shield laws introduced in Democrat-led states over the past year protect abortion pills being sent into other states. In 2020, amid the disruptions of the pandemic and the social upheaval following the police murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, the U.S. saw the largest increase in its homicide rate in modern history. Now, more than 3 years after the start of the pandemic, the country is on track to record one of its largest, if not the largest, annual declines in homicides. Now, this is according to a report released today. Textbook sales are plunging in the face of new laws in conservative states. State education departments are locked in tense negotiations with educational publishers about the teaching of gender, history, race, and sex. Educational publishers face fines and even jail time if their materials break state laws. But the laws are often confusing, and school officials are delaying book purchases. The Republican-led House and Senate in Alabama approved dueling congressional maps yesterday that would increase the percentage of Black voters in the state's 2nd district, but not by enough. Democrats argue, and to comply with a federal court order to create 2 districts in the state with at least close to a majority Black population. Now, some analysts have speculated that Republicans would rather have a court impose a plan drawing those 2 Black districts rather than create one themselves and have the creation of a 2nd Black voting district on their voting record. 2 federal judges handed legal losses to Donald Trump yesterday, one rejecting the former president's bid to move from state to federal court his upcoming trial on charges of falsifying business records, and the other denying a request for a retrial in a civil sexual assault case Trump lost in May. And a federal grand jury deciding whether to indict Donald Trump over his efforts to overturn the 2020 election is set to meet today and hear testimony from an aide who was with former President Donald Trump for much of the day on January 6, 2021. William Russell, a former White House aide who now works for Trump's presidential campaign, was scheduled to testify before the grand jury convened by special counsel Jack Smith. And in some good news in the sports world, NFL owners approved the sale of the Commanders from Daniel Snyder, who sale to Josh Harris, who's a private equity investor, and Irvin Magic Johnson, one of the investors in Harris's group, tweeted after the announcement, "This is truly the biggest achievement in my business career, and it's a historic moment for the entire Black community." Talk about God's perfect timing. This was the right organization for me to be a part of, given its global appeal, history of winning, and the diverse fan base in the DMV. Those are the words and the tweet of Irvin Magic Johnson, who now is a part owner of an NFL franchise. You are listening and watching Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending and breaking news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I am joined by 2 super smart and brilliant contributors. Here for her debut appearance on Areva Martin in real time is Amanda Edwards. She is an attorney and candidate for Texas's 18th Congressional District. And returning to the show, Dr. Nee Corte. He is a KBLA National Political Affairs Analyst, and he is the host of A More Perfect Union right here on KBLA on Sundays at 10 a.m. and again at 10 p.m. And as you know, in hour two, that's the hour where we go behind the headlines and we dig deep on the stories that have people talking. And today we're talking about the recent statistics that are out about the rising Black maternal mortality rates. Those rates have spiked in the last 2 decades, according to the CDC. And as many of you have heard, Black women are 3 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause than white women. Now, we've covered this topic of the issues around the Black maternal mortality rate and how really scary and dangerous it is for Black women to give birth in the U.S. But today we're looking at the health inequities around the Black maternal mortality rate and other health inequities that plague the Black community. But we're asking, can some of these policy recommendations that we see presented in reparations programs, such as in the recommendations of the California Reparations Task Force and that in San Francisco and other places, can reparations be the answer? Can it be the way in which we address some of these really significant health inequities that we see in the Black community, whether we're talking about Black women giving birth or we're talking about Black folks being disproportionately impacted by other chronic diseases such as hypertension or diabetes? I'm going to talk to some experts today about how reparations might be the pathway through which we address some of these health inequities. But before I bring on my guest, here's what I'm thinking about in real time. Now, yesterday we talked about No Labels, this purportedly centrist political group. This group recently released a 72-page political manifesto entitled Common Sense. Now, this proposal states that most Americans are decent, that they're caring, that they're reasonable and patriotic people. This manifesto declares in its preamble that instead we see our 2 major parties dominated by angry and extremist voices driven by ideology and identity politics rather than what's best for our country. No Label says it may back a third-party candidate for president next year unless President Joe Biden seems to be running well ahead of Donald Trump, who they presume will be the nominee for the Republicans. Now, this sounds more like a threat, like unless Joe Biden is where we think he should be in the polls, we are going to run this third-party candidate, presumably because they feel like this third-party candidate would be the way to defeat Donald Trump. Now, the politician this group, this No Labels group, has been promoting lately is West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin. Now, we all know Joe Manchin is a centrist. He is on the record for, voting to kill things like the expansion of the child tax credit, anti-poverty programs that we know have proven effectiveness, and he's on the record blocking initiatives for renewable fuels in favor of protecting coal and other fossil fuels. So you have to scratch your head and wonder how No Labels plans to defeat Donald Trump by putting forth what might be a candidate, Joe Manchin, as a third-party candidate. I think the prospect of that tells you all you need to know about No Labels. But there's more that you should know if you're even contemplating following them, supporting them financially. This organization doesn't disclose its donors. There's been some really good journalists reporting, though, that their donors do include private equity investors, a natural gas billionaire, and real estate and insurance industry figures. The best window into No Labels approach is the so-called common sense policy document. The document says it's a clear blueprint for where America should go and what Americans really want. But when you dig deeper and really go behind the sound bites, this document is a lot of things, but it is not a clear blueprint for anything. To the contrary, it's just it's just a bunch of misinformation and a lot of platitudes. It points out a lot of problems in America, like the housing crisis and poverty, but it's really, really light on any specifics in terms of what to do to solve these big problems. For example, it says building more homes in America will make housing more affordable for Americans. Really? Duh, no kidding. So again, this document is a lot of things, but it is not a blueprint for how we solve the problems in America. And obviously, if this political group is going to try to defeat Donald Trump and jump into the race because they don't think Joe Biden may be where he should be based on whatever their timeline is, they are really mistaken about the way we ensure that Donald Trump doesn't become president in 2024. And the reality is, if they want to support Joe Biden for president, if they want to make sure that Joe Biden beats Donald Trump or whatever candidate the Republicans might put forward, the best way to do that is to support Joe Biden. That's the clear blueprint. Democrats will win in 2024 when Joe Manchin, a Democrat, and others associated with no labels support the Democrat who will be on the ticket for president in 2024. It's really that simple. And I hope the No Labels political party gets that message. A third party candidate running against Joe Biden is not the way to ensure that Joe Biden becomes the next president of the United States. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for Black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of Black audiences are concerned about the lack of Black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the Black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% Black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black. Your Black. Your Black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. And today we are tracking the breaking news and trending news, and we are taking a look at the stories that have people talking. And in this hour, I'm joined by Amanda Edwards. She's an attorney and candidate for Texas 18th Congressional District, and Avi Bernard is going to join us in this segment. Avi is the host of the Friday edition of Areva Martin in real time. And Avi, okay, I'm so excited you are here today because this big news in sports, and I know you are our sports expert. How significant is it that Magic Johnson is a part of this investment group that Josh Harris put together? They now have bought the Washington Commanders for like $6.5, I think it is, billion, the most amount of money ever paid for a sports team. And Magic Johnson saying this isn't just about him and his family. This is a historic moment for the entire Black community. Help us understand what Magic is talking about in that tweet.
Well, it is a huge moment for the entire Black community. We've been talking about having more Black ownership across all of the major sports, but especially the NFL, in which so many of the players are Black and none of the owners have been Black. And now we finally have a Black owner. And Daniel Snyder is not just a bad owner. He's just a bad person. He's had a lot of personal scandals. It's great to get him out of the league and out of professional sports, period. And Magic Johnson has just been groundbreaking ever since he stopped playing basketball. He's a part owner of the Dodgers, as you know, and now he's with the Commanders, which also just underwent a historic name change. And they were being known as the Washington football team because their previous name was so abhorrent. And so now the Commanders have a respectable name and respectable ownership. It's a great moment.
So, Amanda, you're an attorney, and I know you have followed the lawsuits that have been filed against us, the NFL and some of the teams, especially around the issue of not having Black coaches or the way the Black coaches have been treated. The league has had a big problem with women. And this former owner of the Commanders has just been fined like $60 million. And a part of that has to do with sexually harassing an employee that worked for the team. What do you make of having Magic Johnson as an owner of the Commanders? And what might that do in terms of what we have seen in terms of lawsuits alleging discrimination towards Black coaches in the league?
I think that this is such a pivotal moment and critical for our community. It's important that we not just see our community in limited spaces, but instead see them in ownership arenas as well. I think this has been a tremendous success for him and the group with whom he's worked to purchase the team. But I also think it speaks to the importance of promoting equity at all levels. Equity, not just in terms of being able to become a player, but also being able to purchase the team. And that's something that we've often seen, is that the doors to opportunity don't always remain open for everyone, depending on what door you're knocking on. And what this demonstrates is that we can knock hard on these doors and open them. And what I hope to see is that these doors remain open for others to follow. That's also the next feat, is making sure that he's not the first and the last, but instead continues a legacy where this becomes more commonplace and more normal.
And speaking to that, Avi, as a part owner in this investment group, and clearly Josh Harris is the leader of this group and will be the face, I presume, in terms of the ownership group. So how much involvement will an equity partner like a Magic Johnson, and there are other partners in this deal, how much involvement will they have in the day-to-day operations to make decisions around like the coaching staff and who gets recruited and who's in the management? Because also one of the things we often talk about with these professional sports teams is they may have a predominant number of African Americans as players, but the front offices, the management is often not diverse. So will someone like Magic Johnson as a partner have say-so over diversifying the ownership and the coaching staff? I mean, not the ownership, but the management and the coaching staff.
Yeah, equity owners in sports teams have little to no involvement in the day-to-day operations, including which coaches are selected, which players are selected. But having someone like Magic Johnson as part of the face of the franchise, I'm sure that they will consult with him on certain decisions. And it's also just amazing to have him be part of the team. And he isn't actually the first one. Lewis Hamilton, the Formula One race driver, became the first minority equity Black owner late last year. And so we now have two. But to answer your question, no, Magic won't be making any coaching decisions. That's usually up to the general manager, unless you have an owner who is a little bit overbearing, like a Jerry Jones in Dallas, then he'll make the decisions himself. Not to trash Amanda's state. I'm not sure if she's a Cowboys fan. But
I'm a Houstonian.
Just wanted to make sure. And so, but yeah, no, Magic won't be making any decisions like that, but I'm sure that they will consult with him.
No, you're right. I mean, just the symbolism, just having an African-American and particularly someone of his stature associated with the team is all good. And it is definitely, thank you for sharing with us that he's not the first. He's joining Mr. Hamilton. And as Amanda said, when folks make groundbreaking news or when they become the first or the second, hopefully they are opening the door wide so that others can follow behind them. So this time next year or 5 years from now, there's a cadre of African-American, Latino, Asian, and other minorities who are involved in the ownership of these teams. Let's talk about Alabama. Amanda, you're close. You're in the South. The Republicans in Alabama seem dead set on not complying with the court's order, the order that required them to create a second Black voting district, a second Black congressional district. And I read a piece that said these Republicans would rather purposely defy the court's order so that the court can appoint someone, a third party, to come in and draw the maps because they don't want it on their records that they created a second Black voting district, even though they were mandated to do so by the courts. That just blew my mind that these Republicans are refusing to follow the court's order.
Areva, I think we've just gotten into a space of dangerous politics that people, no matter what the consequences, will stop at nothing to secure power and, of course, and keep other people out of power. And in this case, this is an egregious situation, which is very clear on its face in terms of it being counter to what the courts have stated. The population of Alabama justifies the creation of this majority-minority district. There's only one to date, and of course, there should obviously be more. This is a situation in which you've got people just out in the open, willing and very just overtly working against what is just in this circumstance, and having a lack of representation because of the way that the district has been drawn is one way of many of tools that have been used to oppress. And unfortunately, in 2023, we see that as an alive and kicking approach that is being done right in front of our very eyes each and every single day.
Yeah, I was shocked, Avi, that these lawmakers, Republican lawmakers, they know the laws pretty clear. They know the court's order is pretty clear. So they're not saying we're confused by it. They're not even saying we necessarily disagree with it. They're just saying we don't want to be on record having given African Americans in the state of Alabama the constitutional rights that they have to have a congressional district and to be able to exercise their constitutional rights to vote. That just seems... that's beyond the pale in so many ways.
They're very clearly saying, listen, we don't want more Black voters. That is not what we want. We're in Alabama. We should be able to have as many white voters as we want. Just let us have our white voters. That's what they're saying. And regardless of what the court's decision was, they are still going to try to find any way around having an equitable voting process as possible. And we're seeing this in not just the voting aspects, that we're seeing this in every aspect. They tried to overturn the election, and we're seeing the Trump likely going to be indicted again because him and the Republican Party have been actively trying to subvert democracy ever since he lost. And it's disgusting. And as Black people, we have to be aware of this. And that's why I'm glad we're covering it on this show, because we have to be aware of all the things they're trying to do to keep us from voting around the country.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned be aware of this. I was reading something about Tommy Tuberville, the senator from Alabama, who is holding up the promotion of key military personnel over these culture wars about access to abortions and access to medications for individuals in the armed services who are trans. And a reporter went into his district and asked them what they thought, his constituents, his voters, what they thought about his conduct. And they were clueless. They said, we don't like, what are you talking about? Like, what is he doing? What is our senator doing? So oftentimes what's happening in state houses and in Congress and in the Senate in Washington, D.C. doesn't get effectively communicated to the constituents that are sending these lawmakers to these, houses of representation. So folks in Alabama don't know what their senator is doing. And we can imagine that many folks in some of the states that we see folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene, you have to wonder, do her constituents know, how obstructionist she is being? And that's why it is so important that we cover these topics, that we cover them over and over and over again. Don't assume that everybody is reading the local newspapers. Don't assume everybody's tuned into cable news. Don't assume that people are, really tuned in to what's happening in Washington and in their capitals, although we would like for them to be, and it's important for them to be. It's incumbent upon us in the media to use this platform to just keep beating this drum and making sure people get the information they need. When we come forward, we're going to talk about book sales are down at schools because teachers are afraid that they may go to jail if they purchase certain books, and this drop in crime following the end of the pandemic. What does that all mean? And Stanford University, maybe not one of the most respected universities in the country. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for Black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of Black audiences are concerned about the lack of Black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the Black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, KFI only has like a 3% Black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black. Your Black. Your Black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader. Follow 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 the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
Pick up the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up.
Better believe it, brother.
If If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search. We are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me, on me, on me, on me, on me, on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Connection established. Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a state.
We are back, and you are listening and watching Areva Martin in real time. And I'm your host, Areva Martin. And in this hour, we are tracking today's breaking and trending news. And Amanda Edwards, she's an attorney and candidate for Texas's 18th Congressional District, is here. And none other than Avi Bernard is joining us. You all check Avi out every Friday because he hosts the Friday edition of Areva Martin in real time right here on KBLA. Talk 1580 from 4 to 6 p.m. PST. So make sure you are tuning in on Fridays to check out Avi. He's holding it down today, helping us break down some of this news. And I don't know, Florida is in the news seemingly every day. The governor of Florida, who is running for president, who won't attack Donald Trump for the various federal indictments and the lawsuits that are racking up against him. But he is taking time out of his schedule to be on this mission to do what he calls, kill wokeism in the state of Florida. Yesterday, his Department of Education literally voted to approve a curriculum about how the state and how teachers in the state could teach Black history, how they could teach about slavery. And one of the things, Avi, that's so appalling about how Florida is now trying to rewrite Black history, one of the things that the teachers have to teach is how slaves, in the process of being a slave, learn skills that could benefit them. Now, I don't think we've ever thought about the unforced or the forced labor, unpaid forced labor, the brutality of slavery as teaching slaves a skill that they could use. Like, use where? I mean, where is a slave going to use the skill of fear, intimidation, and, just trying to survive? What do you make of what DeSantis is doing to the state of Florida and is trying to do to the nation?
He is making it as anti-Black as possible. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't go full Kanye and say slavery was a choice. It's so maddening because they talk about, critical race theory. We don't want white kids to feel ashamed of their ancestry, but they're going to go ahead and say that Black people benefited from slavery. Never mind the fact that we weren't even allowed to learn to read. We weren't allowed to learn the most basic skills. And if we did, then our lives were put at risk. We literally risked our lives just to learn how to read. And so they're going to say that they don't want white children to be ashamed of their past, but they don't have any regard to how little Black kids might feel about this. And never mind the fact that it's completely false. They're going to try to spin this in a way to make them look as good as possible, and make them look they were doing us a favor by enslaving us. And they won't even let us teach the accurate history. It's disgusting.
It's like we were in job skills training or something. We were at the Job Corps, man. I mean, if you read this is what the Florida Department of Education under Ron DeSantis is trying to do, rewrite the history of slavery in this country to make it look like slaves were somehow participating in a job training program. This is really dangerous. I mean, this is beyond criticizing critical race theory. And you and I both as lawyers know that critical race theory is not a theory that's taught outside of law school. But how do we combat this? You are hopefully going to be sitting in Congress, within the next year or so. How do we, on a national level and the local level, prevent this very dangerous revisionism of our history?
Yes, you've hit the nail on the head. This is dangerous. This has gone beyond just a matter of preference, personal opinion. This is an issue where if you don't know your history, you're in danger of repeating it. And right now, what we have done in our country is exploit many people, and we have to tell those stories, those good stories, those bad stories, and everything in between, so that we know what history should be repeated and which history we should not repeat. And I think that's critically important too, to understand manipulating the understanding of the future is a problem. When you are going about systematically trying to prevent this next generation of children from even being able to make informed choices and have an informed perspective because you've limited their ability to access the information. We have gotten to a space and place in our trajectory as a country that I think we have to turn away from this. We must turn away from this. We have gotten to a very toxic space in our politics where people believe that even if they have to rewrite history, that's okay as long as they win. And that's a dangerous practice that we have got to get out of, because I think right now, so many of the things that we took for granted, me growing up, the peaceful transfer of power, that was never even a question that would not be the case here in the United States, because we are a democratic republic. Of course, we have a peaceful transfer of power. And of course, now we know with what happened on January 6th, that is not guaranteed here in the United States. And so how far are we willing to allow the envelope to be pushed is the question. But I think it takes leadership on all levels. It's not just Washington, it's the state level, it's your local level. So much of what's happening is happening at the local levels. Right now, for example, in Houston, there's been a state takeover of our largest public school system in Houston. And so that means there are no elected officials from the local level having input, having say. These are things that right now in our country's trajectory, we're playing different kinds of games. And I think the consequences of those games have yet to be seen and understood. And I don't want to have our next generation be the guinea pig or those that suffer the most as a result of the games that are played politically today.
I'm glad you mentioned the importance of being involved or being focused not just on national politics, but on local politics, because what has happened, like you just described in Houston may be a liberal city, but Texas is a state where the legislature is controlled by Republicans. So when the Republican legislature, the state of Texas, takes over the school district in Houston, that means those Republican legislators are making decisions about the curriculum and what happens as it relates to that Houston school district. And so some would say that Democrats were asleep at the switch and we were not focused enough on these state legislatures. And now we have these super majorities in states like Texas, like Florida. And what Republicans can't get accomplished at the national level, although they're doing pretty well at the Supreme Court level, but what they can't get accomplished when they don't control the House, they don't control the Senate or the White House, they are getting done at the state level. So we have states like Florida that, they from anti-gay legislation, anti-Black legislation, anti-woman legislation. They are at these states, Texas and Florida and Alabama, just effectuating the far-right extremist agenda of Republicans. And it's how do you live in a state like Texas? I have friends who are live in Florida. And I can't even comprehend how you do that. I understand, cities like Houston and Dallas are progressive, but we're going to talk about, the implications of these state legislatures and tours making these policy decisions that are impacting Democratic cities like Houston and Dallas when we come forward. And also we'll talk about these textbooks, because this curriculum control that we see happening at the state level is really playing itself out in an ugly way as it relates to schools, and could mean that schools will open in September and there won't even be books in the classroom because of culture wars. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search. We are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation in scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train.
So, Avi, these culture wars that are being played out, in the capitals in states like Florida and Texas, these aren't just, theoretical fights. These fights over textbooks and curriculum have a real world impact on everyday people. Now there's reporting out that textbook sales are plunging in the face of these new laws in conservative states because teachers and administrators at schools are afraid to buy books, and publishers are afraid to print books or to sell books to schools out of fear that they may include one of these forbidden topics around gender, history, race, or sex. And some of these states actually have fines for publishers who, create and sell these materials to their school districts. Also, some even provide jail time in their laws. The school officials are saying, look, this is confusing, so maybe we just won't buy any books. So, what does that mean for school kids going back to school in a month or so? The prospect that they may not even have textbooks.
Well, a lot of kids in our communities don't have textbooks as it is, which is a whole different conversation. But in regards to Republicans controlling what we read and what we teach, I thought they were the party of small government, but when it comes to the matters of policing what Black and brown people learn, they're the biggest government that they could possibly imagine. They want to expand as much as they can. And it's really sad because in regular textbooks that we receive at high school level, they don't even get that deep into Black history. They just kind of teach the very basic. I took an AP history course in which we read a book called Howard Zinn, People's History of the United States. And there you can really learn some things that you're not going to learn in most textbooks. But they don't even want us to have a basic knowledge of Black history. And it's because they don't want us having discussions like this. They don't want us to know what really happened because they don't want us to fight back. And that's why Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is always talking about how woke is such a bad thing. Woke means to be enlightened. They don't want us to be enlightened. They want us to stay asleep.
Yeah, that's a really good point. He spends, somebody has counted how many times he says he's fighting against wokeism or woke when he gives a speech. He thinks it's a buzzword, a trigger word or something for his base. And if he can say it, every other word and every sentence, every speech that he gives, it somehow demonstrates that he is the guy that should be, in this case, elected to be the president. But I do worry, Amanda, about this effort, because it is serious and it is scary, because there are, again, cities like Houston and Dallas in these Republican-run states where you have Democratic mayors. So how are they, like in your city of Houston or in the city of Dallas, how does the local legislative body, how does the local political body fight back against, what may be a GOP majority in your state house?
I hate to break it to you, it's even worse than what we've described. Now, in the state of Texas, they are passing preemption laws that then hamstring the ability of these Democratic cities like Houston to govern themselves, to pass policies about fair wages, things of that nature. They're now saying you can't. It used to be a theory of local control, right? Until the local control became Democratic. And now it's anything but local control. It's so much so that we have gotten to a place that is so counterproductive. And I'll just use a few examples that are real life examples. And I say this all the time to people. I've never met a single Republican or Democrat that likes a pothole. I've never met a single Republican or Democrat that likes to flood. But some kind of way, our state legislature has still politicized our local government. And how do we do that? I mean, they've denied access to flood mitigation dollars for the city of Houston that experienced the second worst disaster in American history, $125 billion in damage. And the state said we were eligible for a $0 allocation. And there were Republicans that flooded in Harvey. There were Democrats that flooded in Harvey. We are playing a game with people's lives.
So why is the state, let me ask you this, why did the state of Texas say that Houston wouldn't get any money for the significant damage that you sustained during the flood?
Yes, they blamed it on the formulas. And so they blamed it on the formulas. This was actually the General Land Office decision, and it has since been ruled or declared by HUD to have been an unfair practice. But notwithstanding, you've got people's lives that are lying in the balance of these decisions. And that's what we try as local leaders to impart, is that this is not a political game. These are real people's lives. They deserve to be protected and served by those that lead in both the local level, but also those that lead on the state level. And right now, what's happening at our state level, it's just securing more politics, more political gain, as opposed to actually serving people. We have too many people who are in offices where they're supposed to take a public oath to serve people, and instead they're serving their own political interests. And we have got to start sending servant leaders into these state house seats, these state senate seats, so that they can actually produce results that are beneficial for the residents that they serve, as opposed to at this point, very counterproductive and actually undermines the health and well-being of our community. Look at so many of the matters that have passed out of Texas. Look what's happened with abortion. I can just go down the list of very dangerous policies that deal with access to healthcare, that deal with access to security, just very basic rights and that people should have access to, but yet and still we've politicized them. So at this stage in the game, what I encourage everybody to do, if you have not registered to vote, you need to register to vote. And next, if you have not gotten your friends, family, and the new neighbor down the street to register to vote, get them to do the same. What was done in Georgia has to be replicated. And that is, they didn't win every time they started pushing voter registration, but what they did, they stayed consistent, and they continued to find new voters coming on the rolls, and they kept new Georgians coming into town that they could get registered to vote. And other states like Texas have to stay consistent in their efforts to do the same.
That's a good point. Avian, I've had a conversation with Val Demings from Florida. You know, she ran unsuccessfully to try to beat Marco Rubio for that Senate seat in Florida. And she reminded me that Florida wasn't always a conservative state. Florida was a purple state. Florida was a state where Democrats could win. And when DeSantis ran for the first time for governor in Florida, he didn't have an overwhelming majority in terms of his win. I think that the Democrat in that race kind of, ran into some issues, had some scandal, and so he was able to secure that seat. So it always begs the question for me is, how are these Republicans being elected? When you go down the list of all the things they're doing to deny people their rights, how come they keep getting elected? How come they have the supermajority in states? How come DeSantis has been able to enact the policies that he has? How come the Florida, state house has become majority Republican? Do you think, voters don't care about these issues? They're, again, out of touch with these issues. What do you think is happening on the ground in some of these states?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. And I love what the soon-to-be Congresswoman from Texas just said about duplicating what Stacey Abrams did in Georgia and just expanding the grassroots movement consistently and reaching every possible voter, because it is a problem of voter engagement. It's a problem of misinformation. It's a problem of gerrymandering. And they do everything possible to keep the power for themselves. And it's something that we do have to just constantly fight. It sucks because we want to just, I want to come show up, vote every 2 years, every 4 years, but we have to vote every chance we get, because regardless of whether you're into politics, politics are into you, and they will take over your life and take over your rights if you don't stay engaged. And that's what we're seeing across all these Republican states, in which now most of the South, you can't even get an abortion. And I don't know, there's stretches of states in which you have to go several states away to get an abortion. People can't do that. It's dangerous, as Amanda said earlier, and we have to stay engaged at every possible chance we get.
Well, we see when you have Democrats controlling states, this abortion pill being able to be shipped out of state is because Democratic-led states are providing laws that protect the doctors who are sending those pills. We see states like Michigan, a Democratic-led state with Governor Whitmer and a majority Democratic legislature taking action on things like gun control, things like making access to abortions available in the state of Michigan. So things happen differently when you have Democrats running states. And that's why it's so important that we are engaged at every level of our electoral politics, not just when the president is being voted on, but when those state legislatures are being flipped and when those seats come up, you have to be engaged at that level. We are out of time. Thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us. Good luck in your race to become a Congresswoman from the 18th Congressional District of Texas. All the best to you. And Avi Bernard, make sure you check him out every Friday right here on KBLA Talk 1580. He is the host of the Friday edition of Areva Martin in Real Time at 4 p.m. PST. So make sure you are staying tuned in right here on KBLA. And when we come forward, we're going to talk about using reparations as a way to address health inequities in the Black communities right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.